Sharon Osbourne sat in the plush, bright studio chair of The View, her posture immaculate, the familiar sharp glint in her eyes betraying that she'd come ready for a fight. Across the table, under the glare of the stage lights, sat Prince Harry, casually dressed in a navy blazer and open-collared shirt, his signature ginger hair catching the light. It was supposed to be a light-hearted interview about his new memoir and charitable work. But anyone who knew Sharon knew that, light-hearted, wasn't her style when she smelled a contradiction. The segment began innocuously enough. The hosts exchanged pleasantries, Harry smiled for the audience, and a few well-rehearsed lines about raising awareness filled the air. The crowd clapped politely, but Sharon's expression didn't soften. She leaned forward, fingers intertwined, waiting for her opening. It came when Harry began to speak about the pressures of royal life, and how he had been forced to step back from his duties to protect his mental health. Sharon's head tilted slightly, the way a lioness might tilt her head just before pouncing. "Prince Harry," she began, her British accent crisp but tinged with her trademark rock and roll bluntness, "with all due respect, you weren't forced. You chose. And since leaving, you've done more interviews, more documentaries, and written a whole book airing your family's dirty laundry. You say you want privacy, yet you keep selling your story. Doesn't that sound a little contradictory?" The audience reacted immediately, a mix of gasps and murmured agreement. Harry's practiced PR smile wavered. He chuckled softly, trying to deflect. "Well, Sharon, I think that's a bit of an oversimplification. There's a difference between privacy and controlling your narrative." But Sharon cut in before he could finish. "Controlling your narrative, darling, you've turned your life into a Netflix miniseries. You've done primetime specials, podcasts, and now this memoir. That's not controlling a narrative, that's monetizing it. And it's fine if that's what you want to do, but at least own it." The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. The co-hosts exchanged wary glances, clearly unsure whether to intervene. Whoopi Goldberg subtly gestured for calm, but Sharon wasn't done. Her voice grew sharper. "You talk about wanting to protect your family," she continued, "yet you're publicly criticizing your father, your brother, even your late grandmother's decisions. I adored the Queen, the entire world did. She was dignity personified. Don't you think she deserved more respect than to have her family's issues turned into tabloid fodder?" Harry's jaw tightened. His PR team backstage was probably having palpitations. "I do respect my grandmother," he said, his tone cooler now. "But part of respecting her is being honest about the truth. About what really happened to Meghan and me." Sharon leaned back slightly, her eyes narrowing. "Oh, here we go," she muttered, and the mic picked it up. The audience laughed nervously. "Listen, Harry, I'm not saying what Meghan went through wasn't real. But your wife married into the most scrutinized family in the world. It's not like she didn't know the job came with pressure. Diana, your mum, God rest her soul, faced the same. The difference is, Diana worked through it. She fought for her causes, and she kept her dignity while doing it. You, on the other hand, have been on a global whinge tour for the better part of 3 years. That hit hard. Even Harry's face showed it. He adjusted his jacket, visibly taking a breath before responding. "With respect, Sharon, you weren't there. You don't know what was happening behind the palace walls. And with respect, Harry," Sharon shot back, "neither does the average person. They're struggling with rent, bills, health care. Do you think they want to hear a prince, born into unimaginable privilege, complain about having to live in a £10 million California mansion instead of a palace?" It's tone deaf. The crowd erupted in applause this time, some even standing. One of the other co-hosts tried to step in, saying, "Okay, let's just remember, we want this to be a constructive conversation," but Sharon wasn't letting go of the reins. "You've made your choice," she said, her voice softer now, but laced with steel. "You left the royal life. Fine. But you can't have it both ways. Royal title when it suits you, and Hollywood celebrity when it pays. People are losing patience. You're either in or you're out. Harry, perhaps realizing that a direct rebuttal would only fan the flames, forced a small smile and leaned back. Sharon, I appreciate your passion, he said, the pause before the word noticeable. But I think we'll just have to agree to disagree. Sharon's lips curved into a thin smile, the kind you give when you know you've landed your punches and there's no need for a knockout. Fair enough, darling. But just remember, the public loves a hero, and they love a victim. But they lose interest in a complainer. The producers, sensing the tension was reaching boiling point, quickly cut to a commercial break. But even as the cameras faded, Sharon and Harry's eyes stayed locked for a second longer, a silent acknowledgement that this wasn't just a TV spat. It was a clash of two very different worlds, one forged in British working-class grit, the other in centuries-old royal privilege. When the broadcast resumed, the tone was lighter, but the earlier exchange had already taken on a life of its own. Clips began circulating online within minutes, Sharon's pointed barbs juxtaposed against Harry's restrained rebuttals. Twitter exploded, Instagram reels popped up, and YouTube thumbnails screamed, Sharon versus Harry. Live TV showdown. For Sharon, it was just another day of speaking her mind. For Harry, it was a PR headache his team hadn't anticipated. And for The View, it was ratings gold. But deep down, beneath the bright studio lights and polite applause, the conversation had opened a wound in the ongoing cultural debate about privilege, privacy, and authenticity. A wound that neither Sharon's wit nor Harry's diplomacy could neatly stitch closed. The energy in the View studio had shifted. During the commercial break, producers scrambled behind the scenes, whispering into earpieces, debating whether to steer the conversation back to lighter topics. But Sharon Osbourne and Prince Harry were still sitting at the table, not speaking, their polite TV smiles replaced with unreadable expressions. Sharon adjusted her blazer, her hand steady. Harry kept his gaze fixed somewhere past the cameras, as if rehearsing in his mind what he would, and wouldn't, say next. When the red light above the camera blinked on again, the co-hosts tried to reset the mood. They thanked Harry for being open and vulnerable, and began asking about his charity work with veterans. He answered smoothly, but it was clear the earlier exchange still hung in the air like smoke after a fire. And then, inevitably, Meghan's name came up. That's when Sharon's voice cut in again, the studio's collective breath hitching. I don't doubt you and Meghan have faced challenges, Sharon said, her tone deceptively calm, but when you sit here and portray everyone else as the villain, your family, the press, the palace, you're ignoring that millions of people around the world still respect and cherish the monarchy. You're not just burning bridges, Harry. You're torching the whole city. The words hit like a slap. Harry leaned back in his chair, his eyes narrowing slightly. My family protected the institution, he said, each syllable deliberate, not me. And certainly not Meghan. If I had stayed silent, my wife would have been destroyed. We were drowning. Sharon didn't flinch. And yet here you are, destroying them in return. You talk about compassion and understanding, but where's yours? Do you honestly believe the Queen, your grandmother, deserved to spend her final years reading your accusations in the papers, seeing her family torn apart on the front pages? The audience shifted in their seats, some murmuring. One woman in the front row crossed her arms defensively, clearly siding with Harry. A man 2 rows behind her shook his head in agreement with Sharon. It wasn't just a talk show anymore, it was a live referendum on a family drama that had gripped the world. Harry's tone softened, but his eyes stayed locked on Sharon. You think I don't feel guilt? He asked. You think I don't miss her? Every single day I wish things had been different. But I wasn't going to sacrifice my marriage, my children's safety, for an image of unity that didn't exist. That gave the room pause. For a moment, even Sharon hesitated, as if weighing whether to push further. But then she leaned in. Harry, you've been given a platform that most people can't even imagine. You've turned that into a personal brand. The world sees you now less as a soldier, less as a humanitarian, and more as a man who can't stop talking about his family feud. And here's the problem. The more you tell your story, the less it's worth. The line landed with surgical precision. A few gasps echoed in the audience. One of the co-hosts, Joy Behar, made a visible, oof, face. Harry let out a short, almost incredulous laugh. So, what, Sharon? I'm supposed to shut up and let lies about my wife and me go unanswered? You'd never do that in your life. Sharon's eyes gleamed. No, I wouldn't, but I also wouldn't keep going back to the same well until the water runs dry. You've told your truth. Now what? Will you spend the rest of your life reliving the worst years of it? Or will you finally move forward? The exchange had stopped being about the monarchy. Now it was about identity, resilience, and the power of letting go. The studio was silent except for the faint hum of the cameras. Finally, Harry spoke again, quieter this time. Moving forward doesn't mean pretending the past didn't happen. And it doesn't mean staying chained to it either, Sharon replied instantly. The tension was now so thick that one of the producers gave the "wrap it" signal from the wings, but Whoopi Goldberg hesitated. She knew they had stumbled into the kind of TV moment that would be replayed for days. So she let them go on. Harry adjusted his mic and straightened his posture. You know, Sharon, you and I have more in common than you think. You've spent your career saying what you think, no matter who it upsets. That's all I'm doing. Sharon gave a small, sharp smile. The difference is, Harry, I've paid for my words with my own reputation. You've been trading yours in installments. The crowd reacted with a mix of applause and shocked laughter. Someone in the back muttered, "Damn," under their breath, loud enough for a mic to catch it. The conversation finally broke when Whoopi intervened, saying, "All right, before you two start selling pay-per-view tickets, let's take a moment to thank Prince Harry for being here today." The camera panned out, and as the audience clapped, Sharon and Harry exchanged one last look. It wasn't hostile anymore, but it wasn't warm either. It was the look of two people who knew they'd just crossed a line, and neither regretted it. Minutes later, when the segment ended and the cameras went dark, Harry stood to shake Sharon's hand. She accepted, but her parting words were just as barbed as they had been on air. "No hard feelings, darling. But you might want to lay low for a while, let the story breathe." Harry smiled politely, but there was steel in his voice when he replied. "And you might want to remember, Sharon, sometimes the story isn't over until the truth is told." They parted without another word. Backstage, Harry's team was already on their phones, crafting statements, while Sharon's publicist was gleefully predicting the clip would trend for days. They were both right. By the time Harry's car pulled away from the studio, the first edited videos of their exchange were hitting social media. Headlines screamed, "Greater than, Sharon Osbourne shreds Prince Harry live on The View." Prince Harry fires back at Sharon in fiery debate. Clash of crowns and cameras. Within hours, the internet had split into camps. Team Harry posted long threads about institutional betrayal and the right to speak out. Team Sharon shared clips of her most cutting lines, praising her for saying what no one else had the guts to say. Memes flooded Twitter. Harry photoshopped into boxing gloves, Sharon in royal regalia. By nightfall, the moment had gone global. British tabloids ran front-page spreads. American late-night hosts replayed the clip with gleeful commentary. Talk radio lit up with callers debating who was right. In a way, both had won. Sharon got her viral TV moment. Harry got his message, however contested, in front of millions. But the cost was clear. The conversation about reconciliation, about healing, had been buried under the spectacle of a televised duel. And somewhere across the Atlantic, in the quiet halls of Windsor and the polished drawing rooms of Kensington, the royal family surely saw the exchange. Whether they watched with grim satisfaction or simmering anger, no one outside those walls would ever know. One thing was certain, though, the Harry vs. Sharon episode of The View would be talked about for years, A cultural flashpoint where two very different brands of truth collided, live, in front of the world.